There are seasons in the life of every believer that feel dry, empty, and confusing. Prayers seem unanswered, opportunities disappear, relationships shift, the passion you once felt seems distant. You read scripture, but it does not move you the same way. You worship, but heaven feels silent. These are what many call desert seasons, and the question rises from deep within the heart: why would a loving God allow this? The desert is not proof of God's absence. It is often evidence of His intentional work. Throughout Scripture, the desert is not a place of punishment for the faithful. It is a place of preparation. Before the children of Israel entered the Promised Land, they walked through wilderness. The journey that could have been short became long, not because God was weak, but because He was forming something deeper than geography. He was forming identity. In the book of Deuteronomy 8:2, we see that God led them through the wilderness to humble them and to test what was in their hearts. The desert revealed what prosperity would have concealed. Prosperity can hide pride, comfort can mask compromise, success can silence dependence, but the desert exposes everything. In the desert, you discover what truly sustains you. When resources are limited, when applause is absent, when affirmation disappears, you find out whether your faith was in God or in what God provides. Even Jesus Christ was led into the wilderness. In the Gospel of Matthew 4:1, it says He was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted. Notice this carefully. He was not led by the devil into the wilderness. He was led by the Spirit. The desert was not accidental. It was part of divine strategy. Before public ministry, before miracles, before crowds, there was isolation, fasting, and confrontation with temptation. The wilderness preceded the power. This reveals something profound. The desert is often the birthplace of authority. Spiritual authority is not developed in comfort, it is forged in pressure. When Jesus resisted temptation in isolation, He demonstrated mastery over appetite, ambition, and identity. The enemy attacked Him in 3 areas: physical need, public recognition, and power. In every response, Jesus answered with the Word. The desert showed that His identity was secure. "If you are the Son of God," the tempter said. But Jesus did not need to prove who He was. The desert tests whether you know who you are without external validation. Many believers fear desert seasons because they interpret silence as rejection. But silence is not always abandonment. Sometimes silence is instruction. Sometimes silence is invitation. God removes noise so that you can hear Him clearly. In busy seasons, your prayer life can become mechanical. In successful seasons, gratitude can slowly fade into self-sufficiency. But in the desert, you pray differently. You seek differently. You hunger differently. The desert strips you of illusions. It removes false supports. It exposes hidden idols. Anything you relied on more than God begins to shake. If your identity was rooted in your job, the desert will challenge that. If your security was in relationships, the desert may isolate you. If your confidence was in your talent, the desert may humble you. This is not cruelty, it is mercy. God would rather refine you in private than allow you to collapse in public. In the book of Exodus, we see that God provided manna daily in the wilderness, not monthly, not yearly, daily. Why? Because the desert teaches daily dependence. In seasons of abundance, you may pray casually, but when you need daily bread, you learn daily trust. The wilderness trains consistency. You cannot store tomorrow's manna. You must trust again each morning. This develops spiritual endurance. The desert also reveals what is in your heart. Complaints surface, doubts emerge, hidden fears rise to the surface. The Israelites murmured, questioned, and longed for Egypt even after being delivered. The wilderness exposed a slave mentality that miracles alone could not remove. Deliverance from Egypt was physical. Deliverance from Egypt in their hearts required process. Likewise, salvation may be instant, but transformation is progressive. The desert is part of that process. There is also a deeper intimacy that can only be cultivated in isolation. In crowded seasons, you may know about God. In desert seasons, you come to know Him personally. When distractions are removed, when external voices fade, when support systems are quiet, you begin to recognize His whisper. The desert sharpens spiritual sensitivity. You begin to discern His guidance more clearly because there are fewer competing voices. The Apostle Paul understood this principle. In seasons of weakness, he discovered a greater dimension of grace. In the second epistle to the Corinthians 12:9, the Lord tells him, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Weakness is uncomfortable, but it creates space for divine strength. When you are strong in yourself, you rely on yourself. When you are weak, you cling to God. The desert also purifies motives. Why do you serve God? Is it for blessing, recognition, answered prayers, visible growth, or would you still worship if none of those things were immediate? The wilderness removes external rewards and reveals internal devotion. It answers the question, do you love God for who He is or for what He gives? Some desert seasons are short, others are long. The length often depends on what God is forming. Impatience can prolong what surrender would shorten. The Israelites wandered for 40 years, not because God could not bring them in sooner, but because their hearts were not ready. The desert is not just about destination, it is about development. God is more concerned with who you become than with how quickly you arrive. There is also protection in the desert. Certain blessings require maturity. Certain platforms require stability. If God gave you everything you asked for before shaping your character, success might destroy you. The wilderness slows you down so that pride does not outrun your integrity. It teaches humility before elevation. It builds roots before fruit. In desert seasons, it may feel like nothing is happening, but underground, roots are growing. When rain finally comes, those roots will sustain visible growth. Without deep roots formed in dryness, abundance would overwhelm you. The desert deepens your foundation. You may not understand your wilderness while you are in it. You may question, you may struggle, but when you look back, you will see that it was in that dry place that your faith matured, your prayer life deepened, your character strengthened, and your dependence on God solidified. The desert is not a detour, it is a classroom. It is not evidence that God has forgotten you, it is evidence that He is forming you. And when the season shifts, when the doors open, when the promises manifest, you will carry something greater than success. You will carry depth. You will carry humility. You will carry endurance. You will carry intimacy with God that comfort alone could never produce. The desert is not the end of your story. It is the process that prepares you for what comes next. God does not waste wilderness seasons. He uses them to refine, to reveal, to strengthen, and to transform. If you are in a desert right now, it may not mean God is distant. It may mean He is closer than ever, shaping you in ways that only isolation and dryness can accomplish.